Canada appeased Trump's dislike of its looming digital services tax, putting it to one side in order to keep trade negotiations on track. Then Trump hit it with the announcement of a high tariff rate anyway. Meanwhile, Vietnam was the first so-called trade deal announced from the process of the initial tariff frenzy of April the 2nd, but now it turns out they thought they'd negotiated a reduced tariff of 11%, and then Trump screwed them over and announced a tariff rate of 20% anyway. The question that joins both of these together is whether there's actually any point whatsoever in negotiating with Trump right now, or certainly whether it's worth negotiating with anyone but Trump, since he seems to have little regard to what his own team have negotiated. We'll talk about both, but let's start with Vietnam, because this was the most startling revelation. You may recall just over a week ago, Trump had excitedly announced the deal with Vietnam. In his usual fashion, Vietnam would face a 20% tariff, down from the frankly absurd 46% figure that he'd initially slated for them. There would also be a 40% tariff against goods that are transshipped through Vietnam, widely taken as targeting China, and in exchange Vietnam would open their market to the United States. Zero tariffs. In exchange for what, you might ask? Well, in exchange for Trump hitting them only half as hard as he was already doing for no reason, which is the maximum sort of benefit he's interested apparently in offering anybody. But we now know that this announcement by Trump sent shockwaves through Vietnam because their negotiators had agreed no such thing. The figure of 11% had been discussed. But when Vietnamese General Secretary Lam had his direct call with Trump, apparently Trump just disregarded that figure. And before you knew it, he had gone public with a higher figure of 20%. Now, this is not how you would normally expect things to be done in a business deal. Somebody should buy Trump a basic deal-making primer, perhaps, to help him get to grips with this. No, not that one. Apparently, this not only wrong-footed the Vietnamese, but it did the same for some of Trump's own side, who, after all, had been discussing with the Vietnamese the other figure for some time. One Washington-based lobbyist who works with Vietnam told Politico, Trump sandbagged everybody, and said that the Vietnamese government's reaction, as you could have guessed, was surprise as well as disappointment and anger. As a result, the Vietnamese leadership had not, at the time of shooting this video, come out with a formal response to Trump's message on the deal. Neither the White House nor Vietnam have released any detail about the final agreement. Neither country has formally signed off on it. The real importance on all of this is the impact that it has on all those other, particularly the Asian countries, but really all those other countries currently negotiating with some part of the Trump administration. As a former US Trade Representative, Wendy Cutler told Politico, it just introduces even a greater element of uncertainty, that even once you think you've negotiated a deal, he can turn around and just change the terms. And in this case, it appears that he did it unilaterally and publicly without any buy-in from Vietnam. Then, of course, this week, Trump sent letters to lots of countries telling them what their new tariff rates were going to be. And Vietnam had noted that countries such as the Philippines were given the same 20% rate as they got, only without any of the concessions or rules that Vietnam had to agree to. Now, of course, there's no need to say that Trump won't up the rate against the Philippines on a whim at some future date, but the point is starkly made regardless. This is not a serious process, where the words of what has been agreed actually endure or even matter. The other Asian countries were, said Politico, aware of the last-minute change to the agreed rates for Vietnam, and they've all discussed it with each other. Another former US Trade Representative, Harry Broadman, said, to have a president do that basically pulls the rug out from the credibility of the negotiators. If you're going to the negotiating table with country X and they just saw country Y did a deal but then it was undercut, they'll say, why am I spending time with you? And how do I know that what we agree here is going to be ultimately what the final deal is? This question may also have been going through the mind of Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. There had apparently been a positive atmosphere in trade talks between Canada and the United States. Officials were reported to be talking on a near daily basis to get the deal done by a July 21st deadline. Indeed, Carney seemed to have established a relationship with Trump that was, if not exactly warm, certainly based on mutual respect. Trump had gone as far as to refer to Carney as a terrific guy, somewhat different to how he used to refer to Carney's predecessor, Justin Trudeau. In Trump's world, all of that is just the setup for the punchline. So yesterday, Trump sent Carney a letter where he threatened to raise tariffs that are currently at 25% up to 35%. The letter was the same boilerplate Trump speak letter that had been sent to all the other leaders. So no indication whatsoever that those ongoing talks counted for anything. No credit given for having given away the digital services tax. That was purely taken as a trophy after a bit of Trump bluster, discounted as something that could be traded off against something else. Carney no doubt expected such moments, and he's keeping his eye on the ball, assuming that successful completion of the negotiations will mean that headline 35% tariff figure will just never be implemented. Or if it is, then at least Canada showed itself to be willing in good faith to negotiate, so then freeing its hands to respond more aggressively in the future should it come to it. The trouble with all of these sorts of manipulation tactics by Trump is that they can always pull people into believing that they're making progress, which can affect their analysis and their decision making. So for example, take the Europeans. Right now they are apparently encouraged in their general obsequious approach to Trump, because Trump has finally, they believe, started to say negative things about Vladimir Putin. America is sending weapons to Ukraine again, albeit with NATO paying for them. Trump has shifted his view of what's going on, which is the absolute vindication of the call him daddy approach to diplomacy. Indeed, Trump has said he will be making a major statement on Russia next week, which could well be an announcement that he will now be supporting the hard-hitting Russia sanctions bill in Congress. But let's face it, could just as easily be, I don't know, an announcement that his son Barron is engaged to Vladimir Putin's daughter or something. And this is the point. People in trade negotiations, people in security pacts, people in any relationship with the United States whatsoever, all of them have to be mindful of the fact that whatever Trump says today, and especially whatever Trump's team says today, he could cut straight across and contradict tomorrow. And almost certainly will, because the consistent thing about Trump is the need for ongoing drama and attention. Creating that drama, getting that attention, generally achieved by doing abrupt, unflagged, shocking things to somebody else. Any country, any American institution, any politician will do. And over a period of 4 years, you can count on all of the above multiple times. All fair game for the Trumpian drama. I hope JD Vance and Marco Rubio are ready, because when it comes time to play the game of who is going to be put forward to succeed Trump in 2028, there is simply no way that a large part of that process won't be made to revolve around Trump himself. As in, maybe, does Eric Trump or Donald Trump Jr. step into the fray? Does Trump keep stringing Vance and Rubio along as to which of them he will endorse? Which is, after all, exactly what he did on the vice president pick. The desperate reality is that while the world economy would benefit from stability, while every bilateral relationship the United States has would benefit from stability, Trump's need for constant narcissistic attention means that is the one thing he will never ever give. Vietnam dared to dream otherwise, and has found out. Canada dared to at least hope, although probably wasn't too surprised to find out. NATO members may still have the capacity to be shocked at what Daddy might have in store for them. The cost of all of this to the countries of the world will be varied, always changing and ongoing. The cost of the United States will be that it's really brutal to go from the world-leading superpower one day to being the cudgel used to obtain constant attention by one individual the next. It has suddenly become a country with no limits as to the ethical lows it may sink to, but equally no purpose as to what it actually stands for or even what it's seeking to achieve. 3 more years of that is how you would start a dystopian science fiction novel, one that we might be fascinated to read, but almost certainly won't enjoy living through.